It's just me. That's it. One person. If anyone has seen Alex, let him know that he's supposed to be here, but because he's not. I'm going to do the Alex thing first. Let me just double check that the Discord is going out. There we go. Twitch, YouTube. All right, copy that. This is going out there. Community made there. All right, see if that works. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Yeah, as you can see, it's just myself tonight. Going to be continuing the deck building series that we started, looking at the Genesis math. Maybe that's why Alex decided not to show up tonight, because we're talking about math. But who knows? I actually feel bad. I'm wondering if maybe something's going on. So if that is the case, then hopefully, Alex, wherever you are or whatever's going on, whatever's happening, keeping you from exploring the libraries, hopefully that's not a disaster that you have. Hopefully it's just a timing thing. But anyways, hopefully everyone else has been doing well. See a few people starting to roll in from the Discord. How are you? Let me know if you can hear everything okay. Let's try this. Hello. Perfect. There we go. Nice. I'll let a few more people roll in before we get started, but yeah, so deck building 102. Jeff. Oh, I'm dying up here on stage. I'm gonna need I need a helping hand, or else it's just gonna turn into one of those single talk to the audience streams. How are you, Jeff? Wait for a few more people to show up too. Okay, so yeah, deck building 102. We're gonna go through Genesis math. We're breaking down decks based on numbers. What are the important numbers? What are the things that I have seen? We would have had Alex's perspective, but maybe we'll have some people in the chat giving their perspective. At least you have an audience. That's fair. Thanks for that, Jeff. Let's make sure I get this everywhere. And oh, doesn't look like it goes there. That's fine. All right. I think I've posted it everywhere that I can, or that the bot doesn't post to automatically. But I still haven't seen the actual official bot do anything yet. But that's not out of my purview. All right, those in the chat, what have you been playing? Since I'll talk to the chat tonight. I was unable to get out to the event at Heads or Tails this weekend. It was my kid's birthday, so kind of took precedent over playing Genesis. But what have you guys been playing? Jeff, have you been playing anything new? Any new 5G decks that I need to watch out for? Hopefully, you'll see if you have a local store. I know that they are starting to put out their information for their store championships, as well as the preliminary events that they are going to be doing. I know Tavern Brawlers has put out their information. Looks like a great way to do it online if you don't have an LGS to go to directly. You can probably tag in on the Tavern Brawlers. No, I've been busy avoiding doing anything. It's kind of a weird. This is March in Canada is always a weird one, right? Because it gets really hot sometimes, and then it gets really cold, and then you get like bombarded with snow really fast, or then but then the snow will disappear in a day. It's just a really awkward, at least for Ontario. I know, like, not all of Canada, but at least in Ontario, it gets kind of awkward with the March to April month is it's a bit of a weird one. Only had four at the first prelim. It's called false spring sometimes. Yeah, false spring. Sure. Yeah, yeah, I was just mentioning I wasn't able to get out Steve-O because kids' birthdays, so we're just doing that. Having a lot of blast there. They were having fun with their friends. I wish I could have been there. Looks like it was a draft, which is definitely one of my favorite formats in Genesis. Forbes circuit, I think yours is upcoming, right? Your first preliminary is the 11th, right, Damien? I believe that's, if I remember that correctly. So oddly enough, Steve-O, both of my kids actually have the same birthday. They are 2 years apart, but they have the same birthday. I know it's a weird one, but why weren't we invited to your kid's birthday? Because of that, right? Because of that question right there, Jeff. That's why you weren't invited. Because you had to ask. Yes, this Saturday. Yes, yeah. The 11th is your first preliminary. Nice, good. Yeah, both of our kids have the same birthday, so we kind of do a big thing, right? At least right now we get to do two kids one day. Yeah, big thing, a little bit bigger thing. So we're celebrating both of them. So they both had like some friends over and stuff, and yeah, it was a good time had by all. And then we did like a family thing, and then we went away for a night. So it was a whole weekend thing. It was very, very busy. So don't think we'll always get away with that. I think as they get older, they're definitely going to want to have separate parties with separate friends doing separate things. But at least right now, we can kind of combine them a little bit. It's usually dual themed parties, but that's how we get away with it right now. All right. Well, I think we're going to get started anyways. First of all, there was a reveal. Let's get rid of this. There was a reveal last week. I think it was on the weekend. I want to say Saturday or Sunday. Friends at I'm gonna say this wrong. I think it was Smetchrat. Let me just double check this. I believe. Where did that go? Smetchrat. Yeah, Smetchrat Games down in the States. They had a spoiler for us. The final piece to the champion spoilers was, what does Harley Quinn do? So we finally have that. Finally have that information in front of us. And that is, what is the Pox Spreader? So they revealed that. And here we go. Pox Spreader is a 3-chi. Okay, that's good so far. A 3-chi summon, 1 health with a forward awareness. It has a swift dark attack 1. You can beckon them by themselves for 6, so they can draft. You can play these, or if you were in phage colors, you could still play this as a 1/1. But it has a second ability at action speed. A target combatant in Pox Spreader's awareness, so right in front of it, without decay, gains decay. And then you kill the Pox Spreader. So this is a big change, something I actually want to talk to Alex about how this change came about. But just so everyone else is aware, in Future League, that action ability was very, very different. And so one of the things about Future League is we get to test cards, we get to see how things change, see how things work, and we get to make sure that the cards that do come out are coming out with a expected power level. Now, in Future League, this gave everything around it decay when it exploded. Sort of like a decay poison kind of bomb thing where like it would explode, everything would gain decay, and then there was a bit of a cascading effect that some of us were playing around with, where if you gave a bunch of Pox Spreaders, each of them decay, they would each then explode at the end of the round. And if you had anything that, you know, triggered off of decay, then you could bring back more 1/1. So it was a bit of a multiplying effect. So really glad to see this change with the Pox Spreader. It still does it. You can still do the combo, but the combo is not as explosive and as ridiculous. It's much more honed in and much more expected, and it gives your opponent a lot of chance to interact with it as well. So good change here. The big question, though, is still going to be Harlequin and how strong Harlequin is. So this is the summon that Harlequin gets for free every time they cast or beckon a summon. So they resolve a beckon, it goes to the arena. They also get a free Pox Spreader on the side. So each summon gets you another one of these. Now they come in exerted, but the question is, you know, because this can kill itself, is there some synergies there? Because this is a 1/1 and you're getting this for free, do you go big summon plus a 1/1, or do you go small summon plus a 1/1? We've seen it both in Future League, where you have a big summon and you're getting this extra summon on top to make sort of the balance of some of the extra costs. Then, or you go like the lower summons, and then, you know, we also know there's replicate. So Harlequin has been fairly strong in Future League as far as the power level, but you know, a tsunami at the right time, a meteor at the right time can still wipe out a whole board. But it's definitely interesting. I like the change. It makes me feel a little bit better. I still am hesitant to say that Harlequin is balanced. I think Harlequin is still on the very strong, very powerful side. But at least this change has come through, and we're not giving everything around the Pox Spreaders, not gaining decay. It's just a single. Once again, this does and can give your opponent decay. So if you're facing these and it does its execute, it can give you decay. You do get a chance to react to that if you can, because it'll be on the stack. If you kill it before its ability resolves, then it won't do its decay thing. But otherwise, it can give champions decay. Hey, just because Alex isn't here doesn't mean I'm talking to you all night. Shush. Come here. Come here. Thank you. Quiet. All right. Sorry about that. That's my dog just deciding to fill in Alex's role. All right. So so that's the last little bit of the Harlequin issue there, or the Harlequin missing piece. But yeah, it's looking like it's a pretty good. It's definitely what I think is a pretty good champion. That's how I feel. Sorry. Are you okay? You done? All right. What are your thoughts, chat, about the Pox Spreader? How are we feeling now that this is revealed? Am I crazy for the Harlequin? Am I too harsh? Or do I think Harlequin's too strong? Is it not strong enough? Where are we at? Seems like it's a fairly value efficient champion. All right. Pretty middle of the road there. Pick a side, Sid. Pick a side. Tsunami Timeline will definitely handle it. for sure. Tsunami is very efficient as well, right? So if we have an efficiency battle, then yes, the tsunami being able to wipe out a bunch of these definitely will get the will definitely take the win there. Free 1/1 and a turn is kind of like the original farmer, right? So the original farmer gave everything coming in a extra health. So I guess it was more the original farmer was more focusing on it was harder to kill everything, so it took more cards from hand to kill everything. There was a champion in the past called Swarmer, and I think Swarmer has basically become Harlequin. I'm not sure on that. Actually, I am pretty sure on that. That is how that happened. But yeah. The turn is interesting though, right? So if you can summon early, get a few of these out, you are gaining into that next round a bunch of extra turns. So that is an interesting point to look at too, right? It's even if it doesn't do anything, it gets you can exert this for first if you're going first or whatever, and you can wait to see how your opponent reacts to that. Oh, looks like we might have a Sid might be joining us in a second. Okay, we'll watch out for that. But yeah, I don't know. I think there's some really cool things you can do. I do like personally. I do like the decay is getting the pieces that it needs to become a competitive game. Or sorry, a competitive deck or a way to run the deck. I like that decay has a very much an identity. And I think we're going to see more of that in Invasions. That's fantastic artwork. Kind of looks like you just scheming, just a little bit. Pestilent on board, and these boys giving each other decay might be nice. So that was the combo. I'm not sure if you were here earlier, Sid. That was the combo that I was running in Future League. Now, again, in Future League, this card, instead of being a target combatant, it was everything around Pox Spreader, gain decay. So what I was doing was I was pumping out a bunch of summons, little cheap ones, even the Pestilent Microphores, gaining a whole bunch of these. I was using one of these to explode, giving everything else around it decay. And then at the end of that round, all of those things would gain decay. So if I had 2 or 3 Pestilent Microphores out, every time a Pox Spreader died with decay, I was gaining 3 or 4 skeletons back. And then I kept exploding them and kept passing around the decay onto all the free summons. So then all of a sudden my free summon became 4 free summons. So it was a bit, again, that's why they've toned it down, and they definitely honed it into just a single target. So you can still do it. You won't get as it won't be as explosive on those end of the rounds, but you can still do that combo. It can still be part of your game plan if you want, allowing you to play that way. So I think it was a solid change. All right, let's see if we can get this open. Okay, if I go this way, all right, just give me 1 second here. We'll do this. And we gotta shut that down so that we can bring in this. All right.
Hey.
Hello. I'm no longer alone.
Yeah, it's hard doing those streams on your own, eh?
Yeah, I've also had to practice. I was doing it for a bit, but
I remember I used to listen to those on my drive home from work.
All right, how are you doing?
I'm good. Tired, busy.
Those are all things, yeah.
Yes. It's been a hectic past little while. So sorry I haven't joined on Exploring the Libraries for a while. It's definitely something I'd love to come back to at some point. but I appreciate you taking over as host and doing all the stuff.
Hey, that's okay.
Yeah.
I
So, what are we talking today?
All right, so well, now that we have someone to talk with, we can get into our main topic. As you know, we've been going through sort of a deck building little series, a three-part
Hmm.
series. We're on part 2 tonight, and we're looking at sort of the math behind Genesis, or the numbers of Genesis, and how
Yep.
do they play a role, and some of the things that I have found to work in certain situations, and some things that I think are can be helpful.
Okay.
But yeah, I wanted to sort of share that with the community.
This would be really interesting because uh, I know the math. I created the math. I created all the formulas and everything. But it's really interesting because this is where math turns from being a science over to becoming an art. Because even though I define the math to work a particular way, it doesn't always work that way. It's always up to the player's interpretation. And you being a very active player in the community, uh, it'd be interesting to see how that math has evolved over the time. So I'm
Yeah, and
excited. Yeah.
there's some different ways to look at it too. So so again, because we have a bunch of new players coming in. Oh, a magic
Hey,
historian dropped
yeah.
in.
Hey, Hatcher. Hey, Jordan. It's good to see everyone in the chat. I got the Facebook link working as well. I don't
Oh,
know if you noticed that.
I think my
Uh,
my my comment went out, but I still have
mhm,
this like thing that says you have to reconnect, but maybe that's just me on my end, but it's all
mhm.
good. Yeah, so let's start off. So for new players, again, anyone watching this back later, the basic math that you have to be concerned with is you have to have 50 cards exact in your deck, and you have to have 250 chi. And again,
Mhm.
chi would be the value that's found in a lot of the cards at the top right.
Yeah.
Just going into the decks here. So like if you went to like a lightless or something big, you'd have like an 8 chi card, right? And it has
Mhm.
the chi symbols and the symbol there. And then you have to add up to 250 chi to make sure. So it basically, yeah, as Sid is mentioning here, it equals out to an average of 5.
Oh, that's who that is.
So with that, we have you start building your deck, and one of the biggest things I hear from new players is that when they're building their decks, all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, I'm not getting the math right, or I don't know where to start, or I don't know, it takes so long to try to figure out how to get to exactly 250 chi, and among other things that they talk about.
Mhm.
So some of the ways that we have developed to sort of help that as a community is you can set your cards down in your chi piles they want. Like you have like all your 3 chis, all your 4 chis, all your 5s, 6s, 7s, and 8s. That's sort of how what's this called? Coliseum of Fate is set up that way, right? So it has the columns,
Mhm.
the chis are laid out, and you can start building with just trying to find tens, right? Because you know that if you have a 3 and a 7, or a 4 and a 6, or two fives, right? Those
Yeah.
equal out to 10. And then if you need to get 250, if you have 25 tens, that's 50 cards and 250,
Mhm.
right? But
Yeah.
what do you do when it gets to an 8?
Are
What do you
you
do?
openly asking or
Hmm.
okay? So the easiest way to deal with an eight is 8, 3, and 4. 3 cards that add up to 15. It doesn't give you that nice like clean piles of cards. Uh, so I always go with 8, 3, and 4. The other options, I also work. Well, I guess you go 8, 3, 4, 5. Then you
Yeah.
get 4 cards that
Yes.
give you 20 points, right?
Hmm.
And then that's a little bit more easily divisible. The other option, I guess this is more advanced play on the numbers,
Yep.
is going 2 eights and 3 threes. Uh, that way you can
So
offset. Yeah.
2 8s and 3 3s.
Yeah, because that's 5 cards at 25.
Oh, what happened there? Go back. No. 1, 2, 3. And then we'll do a lightless. Because JC's in the chat just for him.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have 2 8s and 3 3s, gets you 5 cards at 25 chi. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about getting back to 5s and 10s, right?
Yes. That's a big focus. Like the high level math, this is for more advanced players. Is it's not just looking at your average, you got to look at your mode as well. So you remember mean, medium, mode, right?
Yep.
You want to know not just what your mean is, what your average of your deck is supposed to be, because that's 5, but you also want to know what's the highest occurrence of particular cheese. So JC gave a suggestion of 8, 4, 4, and 4, which means in that pile of cards, your mode, what you're going to draw more often is a 4. And that's better than going with 2 8s and 3 3s, where in that situation, you're more likely to draw 3, and 3s usually aren't win conditions. We've seen win conditions usually kind of weekend, but potential win conditions out of 4s. I've never seen a deck that has built a win condition around a 3. So
There was a few in Future League, but they got killed pretty fast. Or changed.
3s are designed to never to like the moment, at least this is the hope, is that future leaguers are looking for, is that the moment you see a 3 chi that could potentially win you the game, yeah, that's broken. That's not a good thing.
So for those who wanted to look at sort of a min-max, you can min-max your deck with, as you're saying, trying to get the highest concentration of cards in your pool, and that is using
Alex
3s and 8s.
FYI.
Oh, let me just scramble again. Close this, open this, and then I have to shrink this. Well, 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 the prodigal son hath returned. Hey, Sleepy.
Hello.
Let me just do some adjustments here real quick. Live adjustments. That's fun. All right. So where was I? Oh, yeah. If you do, you can do 8s and 3s, and you can min-max, and you can have a 2-card deck, right? It would be 28s and 33s, and that gives you 250 chi. Now, that's not great because you're higher constant. You have more 3s than 8s, but that would be your lowest, your min max of your chi. If you had a really powerful 8 chi and a really good supporting 3 chi, you could do that. Or you could pull a Jeff and just do 55s. Tsunamis all the way.
In the really early days, like alpha, and even in the beginning of beta, the idea of running 8s was just ridiculous, because the 3s were no good. So you wanted to avoid 3s like the plague, and then so putting in 8 and putting in 3 4s was not as worthwhile or not as lucrative as just running something like Giant Scorpion, and like balancing out 6s and 4s.
Sorry, I told JC to give you the deck list in Discord, or hopefully he sends it to you, Stevo. I'm not sure what that reference is for. All right. So that's just building with numbers. But now, if we want to look at playing competitively, we want to make sure that the cards that we're putting in our deck are getting into our hand. So when you're looking at building a competitive deck or trying to optimize, let's use that word, optimize your deck, what is the number of cards, or what are sort of the numbers you work with when building for competitive play? Alex, are you awake enough yet?
I'm not sure.
Okay. So for me, it's usually I usually work around with 10s, 8s, and 6s. So I want 10 of a card if it's something that I want to have, almost all the time in my opening hand. 8s, I want to see it pretty often. 6s are okay if I see it in the game, great. If I have an opening hand, okay. And then 4 is like, I really only need this once or twice. Most likely in my opening hand, I want 1, and I'll use it once throughout the game.
What is the average game's length with current meta? Is it the 4 to 5 rounds, or is it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
4 to
4 or
5 rounds?
5, I'd say. I mean,
So,
depends on champion matchup and that.
Yeah.
Opening
So,
hands.
assuming non-Nubia deck, that means you're drawing 10 cards in a game. Your opening hand of 5, 6, and then 4 to 5, so 10 to 11 cards. So yeah, if you're drawing 20% of your deck, having 4 copies, you're not gonna have them like your odds are against you to have those in your in the game. So what type of cards are you looking at that you're running 4s of? Are those like they're not your evasion, they're like high expensive cards like Meteorite, or?
Yeah, so it varies and kind of goes into like when you're getting into the actual deck that you're building. Sometimes it's like, let's say it's like an Electropheromones, very big spell, or a Hellchasm, very big spell. If I'm not focusing on that big spell as my main win con, but I kind of want it to be something to have in my back pocket in case the board gets out of hand, then maybe I just need to have one of those in a game. Or it's like a Malicious Persuasion. It's a techie card where like I want to be able to use this, have it when I need it. Maybe I go up to 6 for that. Sometimes, I've been known to play Wrist Throw in every deck that I have, Bellum and Thymos for, right?
Yeah.
But I don't want a lot of Wrist Throws. I just want it when I need, like I want one just to have in my back pocket kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas like my 10s, if I'm putting 10 of a card in, it's what I want to see, right? So it's 10 Ajna Tigers, it's 10 Bolt Shots, it's 10 Tsunamis, or whatever.
Yeah. So then, if going to the question that as Genesis players, I'm sure we've heard quite a few times, what is the concept of a play set in the game? You're saying it's, on certain cards, it's upwards to 10. But then for other cards, it could be more that mid-range, 6 to 8 copies. It's a good number to have.
Yeah, if you want to be playing one deck, or if you want a pool of cards to build any deck, and you're fine, switching out decks and not holding decks or having multiple decks at one time, I would say you're looking at around 6 to 8 cards.
Mm-hmm.
And then you might have a few extra, 10 copies. Now for me, because I'm insane, I have, some cards I have 30 copies of because I run them in all my decks, right? Called Shot was the first. Called Shot and Wind Slash were the first 2 cards that I ever got to actually keeping 30 copies, because I was always needing more. Because they just go so easily and fit so easily in decks.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
they're good cards.
Yeah. Now, I remember when Wind Slash came out, and I regretted that decision. It's fine now, but at that time, all of a sudden, it's like, oh my goodness, this card is just way too good. But the game corrected itself in a way.
Now, something that has gone away in deck building, at least from my perspective, is focusing on the shape of the deck build, or the curve, if you want to call it. Not the playing curve, because you have no, like, you're not mana ramping, you don't have this sort of build up, right? All your resources at the beginning. Yeah. But there was in the beginning sort of a focus on, do you have a lot of 5s and a little 3s and 8s, sort of like a bell curve, or do you have a disruptive curve where you have a lot of 3s, a lot of 8s, and a little bit in the middle? Or you try to slant towards one side? Or what sort of came out was sort of a balance where you have almost equal numbers of every chi. I don't see that very often anymore.
My cat's fussy. I think in general, at least from what I saw the last competitive season, and we might see things change with newer players coming in and with new meta or new deck types kind of popping up. But we've seen the high risk, high reward decks don't often find themselves consistently in the top ranks. Like they're not consistently winning tournaments. Um, they might do well in a particular event here and there, but the ones that do really well are ones that are closer to a bell curve or flat line deck. Um, uh, that was at least my experience, but I'm also a little bit more removed from seeing what the meta is. So I
Alex,
don't
do you
know
know
how
if,
you could.
the last championship decks are posted on here?
Yeah, they are.
Because I wonder what Oliver's all these deck was.
Uh,
Like I feel like
like
he
full
had
deck.
He was running a lot of Angel.
a lot of Angels, Air Force 10, right?
Yeah.
Where did it go?
If it matches the deck, I would assume 10 angels.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
his was 10, and
Now
yeah.
Nubia does kind of throw a wrench in the entire thing because if we're talking the point of the swing deck is that, or the reason why it doesn't work so often is because it's a flip of a coin. One time you're hitting the high end, your eights and your sevens. The next card you're hitting your low ends, your threes and your fours. Uh, but Nubia draws two cards, so that means she's averaging out to that middle point. Uh, and that's part of the reason why Nubia's kind of
Yeah.
might require some readjusting as because she changes that equation. She
Yeah.
makes the swing deck. And this is part of the reason why I have held the belief that mulliganing would not be as um favorable for deck building as it it's perceived to be. I could be wrong, but from my standpoint, at least looking at the initial math of the game, it mulliganing or Nubia aren't great because they allow for those swing decks to be more consistent.
Yeah, just looking at Raymond's deck here now. Um, less on the eights, a bit more on the sixes and fives. But you're kind of a little bit more shifted towards the sixes and fives.
Mhm.
But it is interesting, like the shape of the curve and how it works.
Mhm.
6 dedicated studies ensures a few angels come in that the drawing 2 cards around. Yeah. The dedicated studies definitely helps with the filtering there. So, we've talked about the number of cards we can put in if we want to have, you kind of start with the basis, right? Like, let's say take Air Force 10, right? So Air Force 10, there's 10 angels, and you can kind of start building around that, bringing in the pieces that you need, and then you play the deck, right? And you want to tweak the deck a little bit. You want to adjust some of the numbers until you get to a level that makes sense, or you're seeing the regular cards after you play with it and after you experience your deck. So all those things go into the deck building. Now, if we look at specific deck types, as we talked about last week, where we have, we'll go with the basic 3 that sort of everyone kind of, builds around, right? You have your summoners, your spellcasters, and your fighters. When we look at those 3 types of decks, how does that change the numbers of cards that you put in, right? So like we have here on the screen, we have Kato's deck. Kato's a bit of running everything. So if we look at this just as an example, he's got 8 Chrono Walkers, which is a summon as a card, but it's also a spell, as Alex likes to refer it to. And then 9 Aja Tigers. So that's 17 summons. And then technique wise, we have the 5 pressure points. We have the 5 snares, the 3 dedicated studies, and the 6 warp strikes. So that's 18 techniques. And then we have 4 epiphanies, 4 mind reading, and 6 shutdowns. So that's 14 techniques. So pretty much what I would call a hybrid build. You have about 14 to 17 summons and then the rest are a split between techniques and spells. Whereas a summoner build would be more focused on the actual summons because you're trying to win with those.
Yeah.
Right? Or Nubia Burn will be very much focused on the spell casting side.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing that's always come to my mind, this is more of a philosophical question that I had in the early days of designing the game, was how do you divide the cards? Because if you divide them, there's two ways to look at the cards. There's the permanents, the things that hit the table and stay there, versus the one-off abilities, your spells and techniques. You can divide them on those lines. So that if you do it that way, fighters and casters are actually no different. The real difference between them is the resource. But if you divide it on that line, then summoners and casters don't have much of a difference, and fighters like techniques stand on their own. So I don't like grouping spells and techniques together, because it comes on. It really comes down to your resource management in that way. So I like looking at how much damage are you outputting as a champion alone versus how much are you relying on summons to do it. I don't know. The math kind of gets blurry for me. So
when it gets to damage, yes, math gets
like how do you divide the cards? Do you actually consider spells and techniques as separate card types? Are they essentially the same card types? And then in that case, are fighters and casters actually different classes?
Well, I mean,
it's a deep question.
It's a tough question because I think at this point, when you're like, at least the spellcasters and the fighters that we are seeing, except for maybe the Iblis deck that we saw, they are very much trying to win the same way. They're trying to use their cards to whittle down your opponent's damage, so they're winning by playing cards. Whereas some of the summon decks that we see, they're going to play their cards early and try to utilize what's on the board, have that board control, have that turn economy, and try to take advantage that way. And Alex and I talked about, the difference between aggressive strategies going forward and playing your cards, trying to aggressively win, or, that value attrition gameplay where you're trying to eke out advantage or value by capitalizing usually through summons. But to your point, like if spells and techniques if spellcasters and fighters are similar, I guess it's how the resources are divided among those champions, right?
Yeah.
Because once your aura pool runs out, it's going to be really hard to get that back unless you have that option available to you, right? And if your cards run out, then you're dead. There's really no point.
Yeah.
It's why where I'm at now, when I'm building a deck and I'm playing it, I'm looking at when the game is over, what resources did I leave on the table, sort of, right?
Yeah.
What did I not utilize?
Yeah.
The last few games with a deck that I've enjoyed, the Divine Precision deck is, I have, I might have 8-10 cards left, and I had, 35-40 aura left. So I looked at my deck and I saw, okay, well, I've been using Diving Jukes as sort of a movement get around thing kind of spell, to utilize either defensively or positionally, however I want to do that. But maybe what would be better was actually, what's it called? What's the movement card? Illusionary Misplacement, right? I had that extra 35 aura. It's still the same swift ability. It still moves me in the directions that I can still utilize my spells and techniques. But I'm using that aura now so I can do more damage with my energy. And that's an adjustment that I've seen through play.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things I really appreciate about Genesis is that it's one of those things when it comes to fine-tuning a deck, it comes through practice. It comes through observing those patterns and realizing my gameplay with this particular deck, I'm a little bit more aura heavy than I expect to be. Let's switch some of that to energy. There's this refinement process, and there's so many little gears and levers for you to adjust
Hmm.
that it's ongoing. You can work on the same deck for quite a while and find little areas to improve if you're inclined to.
Mm-hmm. The the latest thing that I kind of wanted to trend towards this evening was an idea that I've been working on, and I've sort of seen it effectively being shown a few times. Alex has definitely shown that it works and can work, and that's kind of what I'm referring to as a basically an 80-20 rule. And it doesn't always apply to everything. It
Mhm.
really only applies to the extreme champions. So not the champions that have energy reduction, good aura, and good health. They can kind of do whatever they want. But when you have extremes, take like Malik, high health, low aura, and one energy, or you have like Iblis, high health, low aura, no energy. How do you build to effectively use their resources? And
Mhm.
in the 80-20, it's basically saying, okay, my lowest resource of 80, that 80 aura or 90 aura that I have, 20% of my deck is going to be just for that,
Yeah, I can see that.
right? And then 80% of my deck is going to be not using that same resource,
Hmm.
right? So Alex proved my point even before I shared it with him with his Iblis deck, right? He ran just caustic millipedes. He ran 14 of them or whatever, and that was all that deck, like 12. I think, I don't know, was it 12, 14,
I think it was like 12.
12? Yeah, so
12
close
sounds
to
about
that
right.
20% already. And then that was all the aura pool. Nothing else in that deck was devoted for aura, and everything else utilized different
Mm.
resources. And then
Yeah.
another one that sort of showcased that is Satyr. Satyr, you can put up to 40 summons inside of Satyr, and that deck functions really well. And then you have 12 to 10 to 12 cards that are just energy based or
No,
health
that
based.
yeah, that's actually really. You said something that was actually kind of interesting. Going back to an earlier point I was saying, which it's kind of like it's weird because you can divide the cards in a lot of different ways. You started talking when you were talking about Iblis, you were talking about dividing by aura and non-aura usage. But when you went to Satyr, you didn't say aura, you said summons.
Summon.
So
Mm-hmm.
uh, your resource, whatever your resource management is, it's not aura or energy, it's how you divide the card pool.
Right.
There's so many different ways you can divide the card pool. So it's like what I was saying earlier about spells and techniques. If you divide it one way, they're essentially the same card type. If you divide it another way, they're completely different.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of interesting too.
So I have Kun deck here. I have Sid Williams Kun deck that he ran to taking first seed on day one of the championship.
Mm.
And Kun, for the longest time, I think, kind of like, again, Kun has this ability that just allows him to get into spots that he's not supposed to be able to get into that easily or that fast,
Hmm.
right? So inside of this deck, we have only 8 summons. Well, 3 if you call the Cabas a summon. It's usually just a late game or I have nothing left in the tank sort of card, which blue does have that in their card pool, which is an effective card to have at the 3 chi slot. But the 8 summons that are there are just card draw. So it comes down, you get that card. For the breakthrough, it's sort of done what it can. If it gets 3 damage in, that's awesome. If not, you've sort of gained that card advantage, or replace that card from your hand.
Hmm.
And then we have here, for strictly aura cards, we have 7 water warps. I guess protected by faith is a little bit of both. It's in both categories. The tsunamis are in the sideboard. The zenith pulses are in the sideboard. And then we have the bolt shots, dedicated studies, direct punches, warp strikes, everything else is energy. So it's a very different, again, looking at utilizing that energy that he has, but basically saying, okay, well, between the limbs and the water warps, I have 100 aura just to do whatever I want with those. So it's interesting to look at it as which resource am I going to really focus in on?
Mm-hmm.
And it's some, as I said before, we started this section, is that the champions that have a bit of everything, you can kind of do whatever you want. They're very flexible, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have, a Kareen has an okay health pool, pretty good chunk of aura, and a good energy reduction. So
Mm-hmm.
there's 50 different copies or versions of a Kareen deck, and they will all function really well. But like a Satyr is very focused, and you can make a very strong deck. At least from my perspective, you can make a very strong deck by focusing in on, 80% of my deck is going to be focusing on his ability or their ability.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is with the Tashir deck that I run, I'm focusing on Swifts. Everything in my deck is Swift.
Mm-hmm.
The only action speed things I have are for turn 1, turn 2, and I'm going to either drop a summon to gain some turn advantage, or I'm putting on the Rapier's Precision. Everything else, it's all Swift. I always want to be able to react. So in that deck, I'm looking at my 80-20, and I'm looking at not even as aura, energy, summons, or techniques. I'm looking at it as Swift versus action.
Interesting. All right. So this is where I kind of given the talk we've had, this is my summary points thus far, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Start with when it comes to the chi mapping, you want to be looking at that averages of 5s. So either making piles of 10 or piles of 20 if you're dealing with an HE.
Mm-hmm.
So the step walking into that is figuring out where your division line is. Where's your 80-20? So you're looking at your champion, you're going to say, I want 80% of my deck dedicated towards this facet, be it aura, be it summon, be it speed, swift, whatever your dividing line is. You want 80 here, 20 there, and then you start selecting your cards. When you start doing the math, you're looking at around that 5 point, and then it comes through iteration. After you play a game, you look at which resources do I still have remaining at the end of it. How much health did I have? How much aura did I have? How much energy did I have left? And then seeing where you can adjust those numbers to optimize your usage of your resource spending.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And that initial build, there's very rarely that initial build do you hit 250 and 50 cards flat. Like it's still, you'll get really close. You'll be at 48 and you'll have to tweak at that point. 48 cards, and I'll be, I need to get 5 chi in, but I need 2 cards and I don't have a 2 chi card. So that's when you have to, there's always that bit of initial tweaking. But after that, when you're doing your iterations, that's when I like to focus in on, okay, well, if I need to make some space, I'm going to have to come down from my top end.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on where I put that top end, I might actually get a whole bunch of middle space to go up. Because if I take a 7 all the way down to a 4, I could take, a bunch of other 4s, like 3 other 4s, and bring them up to 5s to make up for that balance. That takes some time, and Calls Me with Fate definitely helps a lot with that. It's much easier than paper. But yeah, so it's kind of where I'm at with like deck building now is, as you said, you got your 80-20. What is your focusing on? Going off of last week's talk, are you focusing on your champion stats, or are you focusing on the champion's abilities? Then defining your, spells, techniques, swifts, action speeds, how you want your deck to function. Put it together and then you have to play it. You have to kind of either goldfish it or get in there and play a match somehow, and so you start reiterating from there.
Yeah. I actually saw a really cool trick that someone at Forbes during the open house a few weeks back. They were teaching some new players how to do deck building, and they pulled out a game mat, and they're like, "All right, put your champion in their starting position. The two spots to the right and left, consider those empty. Each other spot, which gives you, the 5x5, 25 spots. Each other spot, you want 10 chi in here. So then you'll get 50 cards, 2 cards in each slot, 50 cards, 250 points, and you're using the game map to do that."
Nice.
And I was like, that's actually pretty cool. That's a good visual way of doing that math. So
yeah, that's a really cool use of spatial awareness and looking at it more visually, right?
And then you can see all the cards kind of laid out in front of you, which is a cool way of having that out there. So I don't remember who it is. I'm sure Damien will mention it, but I really like that idea. And I think going forward, I'll probably be using that with a few people as I'm showing them deck building for the first time.
Yeah, I think the last thing is just for new players getting in. Yes, it can seem daunting, but I think there's lots of resources of seeing other decks that are built, copy people's decks, see why do they use the numbers that they have. You will see a lot of, usually on the competitive side, you'll see a lot of 8s, 4s, 6s, and then sometimes odd numbers depending on how they've tweaked it, right? Usually that's where the odd numbers come in, because they're like, okay, well, I want one more of this, and then I'm going to take, one less of this to sort of make that happen.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, like, just if you were to give just a quick elevator pitch for each champion, right? So for spellcaster, for brawler, fighter, and for summoner, what would you sort of be like? Okay, summoner. So I'll do summoner. Summoner, 25 summons, and then build the rest. Oh. What would you say for a spellcaster? No summons? Some?
I don't play spellcasters very often.
All right, Alex,
That's
take it
more
back.
Alex's territory.
Oh man, the only thing I'm thinking about is grilled cheese.
Alex, why'd you even show up tonight? Go back to bed. All right, I would say for a spellcaster, you gotta be very careful what spells they are, and you gotta be looking at like your spells. I would say it's more important about the per spell cost is about 10% of your aura pool. So if you have 100 aura, your spells that you're using should be about 10 aura just for beginning stat line, right? Like if you have 100 aura, look at cards that have 10 or 5 cost and start building with those.
Yeah. My thought process actually thinking about spellcasters, a few times I use them, win condition.
Yeah.
Like make sure that you're building in your win condition. Start with your win condition. And for fighters, what I recommend, I play fighters more often than any other class, and I always start with what's my evasion.
Right.
Do not neglect evasion for fighters, because when you're in the thick of things, you're gonna die so fast if you don't have a way to get out of there.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Chrono Walkers, diving jokes, O10s, warp, all those things are heavily necessary.
Yeah, invasion's that's a great call out for fighters. Nice. So that's if you're brand new, 25 summons for a summoner. Look at the per cost for your aura so you don't blow your aura out really fast, because the worst thing you can do is sitting down a brand new game. You've got all these really expensive spells. You use 2 of them. You realize you have no more aura left, and then it's just like, now what do I do? So focusing on the cost of the aura spells for if you're building a spellcaster deck, and if you're a fighter, look at your invasion first, and then build around that. And if you are, once you've gotten past or comfortable with those 3, look at what I call the hybrid of taking a little bit from each pool take some summons, take some spells, or some ore cost, take some energy cost, and then start building with that and see how that goes. And hopefully through that process, you'll see what you like, what you don't like, what works for you, how your mind works. And then when you sit down and play, start looking at, am I going up ahead and trying to be aggressive? Am I staying back and trying to be reactive? And sooner or later, you'll be beating everyone at the championship.
Yeah.
I like no more than 20, 3 and 4 Gs. That's a good way to look at it too. You don't want to have too much low end.
Yeah. I always say for new players, one of the biggest traps I find new players in is that they overthink it. They want to build the perfect deck at the very beginning. It's like, no, build your deck however it is. Just get to that 50, 250 and just start playing with it. Because you never know how good a card is. Some of the most powerful cards became better through experience. It wasn't cards that were obviously great. So yeah, I just start playing. Don't overthink it. Just build your deck and start playing.
All right.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it's 8:00. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me.
Welcome.
Good morning, Alex. All right, next week we have our final little piece of the deck building. We're going to talk more about that optimizing. How do we find cards that are too expensive and we want to adjust, but we want to keep the same effect? Are there cards that allow us to, still put out damage but are cheaper for cost? When do we look at split cost cards? Are they important for specific types of champions, or are they just good in any deck? Are they right? Is that the way we should be building, the split costs, or should we look at those only in specific instances? And then finally, the last thing we're going to talk about, we're actually going to talk about sideboarding, and then how do we cover the holes within our main deck that we have? How do we approach sideboarding? What things do we need to look at, and what are the options that we have out there? And if all that goes well and Alex shows up this time, we will actually build a brand new deck. So everyone who's watching, think about who you want us to build. Alex and I will build a deck at the end of the episode using everything that we've talked about. And we'll do a quick, maybe we'll bring back the wheel and we'll see which champion we get. Or we'll put it to a vote. Maybe I'll figure out how to do a poll and we'll get...
I'm just thinking of like random improv comedy clubs. It's like, give us a champion. Give us a
figure out how
beverage.
to get a poll and get people to vote, and then we'll build a deck with that champion. Other than that, any announcements? Anything on your end, either of you?
So the calendar for the store championship, there is an actual calendar. So if you go to the main website, store championship, like scroll down a little bit to the little thing about the store championship, click there. There's now a event calendar. And you can actually see all the dates that the store championships are being hosted at.
Oh, look at this.
Yeah.
Right here. TBD. TBD. Nice.
I'm just waiting for
some
it
new
to show
ones
up on
here
screen.
too. Valhalla Hobbies is on there.
Yeah.
Smash Rat's on there now. Nice.
I'm just double checking where you're at. Yeah, the event calendar. Yeah. Sorry, lag.
No worries.
So that's there. And then the other thing is there's the open house at ANC at the end of the month. And as more stores start hosting open houses, we're going to try creating those Facebook events and getting them out there. So that's a big thing. And then I think those are our biggest things that are happening right now. But the store championship, that's going to be awesome.
Nice. And Invasions is coming out when? Oh, I tried. All right. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.